It was an attack that brought the world right to the edge of a brand new global conflict. The leader of a major world power, assassinated in a precision strike that seemed to come from literally nowhere. But was it really that sudden? Today we're going to break down exactly how this unthinkable event happened. We'll look at the long simmering tensions that set the stage, the moment-by-moment execution of the attack itself, and of course, the chaotic, dangerous aftermath that followed. All right, let's dive in. So our story kicks off in the pre-dawn darkness. It's 6 o'clock in the morning as a squadron of advanced fighter jets lifts into the sky. Their mission is one of the most audacious in modern history, and their target is hundreds of miles away, deep inside hostile territory. Flash forward just over 2 hours, they're at their target, right in the heart of Tehran. A government compound, believed to be holding Iran's entire top leadership, is rocked by a series of massive explosions. The operation is on. And the immediate result? It's absolutely stunning. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran for more than 30 years, is killed in the strike. The news sends shockwaves around the entire planet, and it raises this huge question. How did a decades-long shadow war finally explode into a hot one?
To really get what happened here, we have to rewind the clock. This wasn't some sudden act. Nope. This was the climax of a long, bitter history between Iran, Israel, and the United States.
The seeds for all this were really planted way back in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. It established an Islamic republic that right away declared the US and Israel sworn enemies. Now for years, things just simmered. But then in 2002, the discovery of Iran's secret nuclear program, that lit a whole new fuse. We saw a brief flicker of hope in 2015 with the Iran nuclear deal. But when the US pulled out in 2018, it felt like we were right back on a collision course. And by 2025, you had a perfect storm brewing. Negotiations had failed, Iran's economy was collapsing, and massive internal protests were being met with a really brutal government crackdown. Back in 2015, there really was this moment of cautious optimism. The nuclear deal, it was presented as this huge diplomatic achievement, right? A way to head off a war through talks. The goal was crystal clear and very public. And then, bam, just 3 years later, US policy does a complete 180. The deal was scrapped, sanctions were slapped back on, and that path of diplomacy was totally replaced by a new path of maximum pressure. A direct confrontation started to feel almost inevitable. And that confrontation finally arrived. So let's take a closer look at the military operation itself. It was codenamed Epic Fury by the US and Roaring Lion by Israel.
So this wasn't just some random strike, it was this meticulously planned three-wave assault. First up, the decapitation strike we just saw, aimed squarely at the leadership. That was followed immediately by a second wave designed to blind the enemy by taking out Iran's air defense systems. And only then, with the command structure in total chaos and their defenses down, did the third and largest wave begin. A massive air campaign to destroy Iran's ability to even fight back by targeting its entire missile arsenal.
I mean, the sheer scale of the leadership they took out, it's just staggering. We're not just talking about the supreme leader here, the chief of staff of the armed forces, the head of their National Defense Council, the commander of the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and the defense minister, all of them killed in that one initial strike. It was an absolutely crippling blow to the regime's entire command structure.
Think about this. In just 30 seconds, a total of 30 senior Iranian officials were gone. Intelligence agencies had apparently been tracking Khamenei for months, mapping out his every move, and they predicted he'd be at this specific high-level meeting. And you know what? Their intelligence was absolutely flawless.
But here's the thing. Even a decapitated regime can strike back. Even with its leadership in chaos, Iran's military launched a swift, wide-ranging retaliation they called Operation True Promise 4. And just like that, the conflict spread like wildfire across the entire region. And the response was, it was massive. Over 200 missiles were fired at Israel alone, but the attacks did not stop there. Drones slammed into Dubai's airport in the UAE. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was targeted. Ballistic missiles rained down on Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And Jordan and Kuwait also found themselves directly in the line of fire. The key takeaway here is this. It immediately escalated into a regional war. And it wasn't just countries getting involved either. In a show of solidarity, the Houthis in Yemen announced they were jumping back into the fray, resuming their attacks on one of the world's most critical shipping lanes in the Red Sea. And that threatened to kick off a whole new global economic crisis. So in the days that followed, as these attacks just kept going back and forth, the world was left to grapple with the fallout and with the justification for such a dramatic escalation. And this gets us to the huge question at the heart of this entire operation. Was this a war of necessity, a preemptive strike to stop a threat that was just about to happen? Or was this a war of choice, an attack on an enemy at a moment when they just seemed weak?
The U.S. administration argued it was a necessary defensive action. They claimed Iran's activities were directly endangering American troops and allies. The counterargument, though, points out that U.S. intelligence itself suggested Iran was still years away from a nuclear weapon, and its missiles couldn't even reach the U.S. mainland. So, from that perspective, the attack wasn't preemption, it was a preventive war, which, by the way, would be illegal under international law.
But beyond all the strategy and the politics, there is the undeniable human cost. Initial reports from the Iranian Red Crescent claimed that at least 555 people had been killed inside Iran since the strikes began. And that's a number that doesn't even distinguish between soldiers and civilians.
One incident in particular was just horrific. Iranian state media claimed a single airstrike hit an elementary school that was next to a naval base, killing 175 people, most of them children. Now, while these numbers have not been independently confirmed, they paint a truly tragic picture of the war's toll on ordinary people.
And the cost was felt on the other side as well. The U.S. military reported its own initial casualties, confirming that 3 American soldiers had been killed in Iran's retaliatory strikes.
So, the strike achieved its primary military objective. The old guard is gone. But in doing so, it has thrown an already volatile region into absolute chaos, leaving this massive power vacuum in its wake. And that leaves us with one final and maybe the most crucial question of all. With the old regime shattered, who will now control Iran's future?